If you are looking for practical, ready-to-use ideas to engage your students, you're in the right place. So, subscribe and let's keep your lessons active and inspired. So, today's big question is this: how do you build a classroom experience that's successful for both you and your students? Not one at the expense of the other, but a room where everyone's actually thriving. So let's get into it. It starts with us. As teachers, we have to genuinely believe in each student's ability to learn. And part of our job is helping them cultivate that same belief in themselves that they can really succeed. So instead of just preparing students to be good test takers, let's also be preparing them to be critical thinkers and lifelong learners. Because, after all, education is for life, not only for school. So, how do we actually do that? For me, it starts with discarding the labels. A student doesn't need to be an A2 or a B2. They just need to be the best version of themselves. It's about developing a sense of self-efficacy because our beliefs shape how we think, how we feel, how we motivate ourselves, and how we act. So talk to your students about their own personal reasons for making the decisions to learn, because ultimately they need to take ownership of their own learning. This brings us to the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. And at the heart of it, it's all about choice. You choose to succeed. So teach your students to hear how their mindset shows up in their own thoughts, to recognize that they always have a choice, to actively use growth mindset language when they talk to themselves. And then the important part, to take action. And here's something I want you to really hold on to. Where students start does not dictate where they'll end up. So start where your students actually are, know where they're going, that is your goal, and expect to get them there. Support them along the way and be sensitive and genuinely excited about their learning. Use feedback to help them to get better and focus on quality over quantity. Don't rush just to put a tick and say it's done. And remember, never work harder than your students, because independent learning is far more rewarding for them than us doing the work for them. So that leads us to the real question. How do we engage students? How do we get them to a place where they're actually enjoying being in your classrooms and connecting what they're learning to their own lives? That's what we're really after. And it all comes back to relationships. The type of relationship we build with our students becomes the foundation of how they perform in our classrooms. It is really that fundamental. It's about knowing your students as people and as learners. Two things that help so much here: providing clear criteria and examples, so they know what good looks like, and providing them with feedback and support along the way. When you're preparing a lesson or a strategy, here are some questions to ask yourself. What background knowledge do students need to succeed? How will you introduce the strategy to them? What are the pros and the cons of using it? How does the strategy actually help students be more successful with the lesson or unit? How will they get to practice it? And finally, how will they ultimately use it on their own? And these are the kinds of strategies worth teaching explicitly. Vocabulary acquisition methods like word association and flashcards, Reading comprehension strategies like skimming, predicting, summarizing. Speaking practice approaches like role play, readers' theatre, and debate. Listening comprehension techniques like note-taking and chunking. And writing strategies like brainstorming, drafting, and peer feedback. Here is a mindset shift I love. The very first step is figuring out how you'll support your students before the lesson even begins. So much of that work happens in the preparation, and part of that is teaching the soft skills that quietly supports all learning. Social traits like communication, teamwork, problem solving, note-taking, study skills, and organization. They need these in order to be successful. I want you to sit with this distinction. Control is making someone do what you want them to do. But motivation is helping someone choose to do what you ask them to do. That is a completely different relationship. So think honestly for a moment. Who were your unmotivated students this year? And what have you actually tried to do in order to reach them? And finally, this can't be all on us. Our students carry accountability too. That means they need to set clear personal goals, both short-term and long-term, whether it's making time to learn vocabulary or to write an essay. It also means regular attendance and turning up with everything they need for the lesson. Active participation rather than them socializing or texting. Completing classwork and homework. Knowing when to ask for help and where to find it. Taking self-assessment and peer assessment seriously. Using class time well and making the most of every resource you bring in. Also, they need to be tracking their own progress and reflecting on their learning strategies. And through all of it, holding on to their motivation and a growth mindset. Students do not know how to do this. We need to set time aside and teach them one or two of these skills at a time, and eventually it'll become part of their learning capabilities and nature. You've got this. You can do it. Good luck. If you think these ideas are helpful, give the video a like. Stay inspired, and I'll see you in the next one.